Previously on Izzyland.
I'm so passionate about the fact that we need to remove the stigma around mental illness and autism. The fact is, everyone has either someone who's struggling or autistic in their lives, in their families.
People automatically assume that an autistic person is nonverbal, incredibly smart, and talks in a robotic tone. Yes, they exist, but it doesn't personify what the autistic community is.
Senator Warren, I've been talking to Americans around the country about automation, and they're smart. They see what's happening around them. Their Main Street stores are closing. They see a self-serve kiosk in every McDonald's, every grocery store, every CVS. Driving a truck is the most common job in 29 states, including this one. 3.5 million truck drivers in this country, and my friends in California are piloting self-driving trucks. What is that going to mean for the 3.5 million truckers or the 7 million Americans who work in truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal? Saying this is a rules problem is ignoring the reality that Americans see around us every single day.
I cannot get enough of that entrance. So just a bit of a follow-up from the previous video. Presidential candidate Andrew Yang just had his speech at the Iowa Justice and Liberty event. And he was phenomenal. No, not that kind of phenomenal. But instead of bringing up his typical UBI plan, the Freedom Dividend, he actually zeroed in on his Humanity First message. He started off with a very powerful statement by saying, "Our kids are not alright." It's the same approach he had with his first TV ad. Not to mention, it's the main narrative of his campaign and his reason behind running for president in the first place. The reason why he has such a mass diverse following. Plus his interest was awesome. But here's a quick little highlight of what he said at the Iowa event.
And I'm running for president because of a thought that the parents here in this room have had, but we have been afraid to express. And it is this: our kids are not all right. They are not all right because we have left them a future far darker than the lives that we have led as their parents. I started a nonprofit called Venture for America that helped create thousands of jobs in cities like Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, Baltimore, and you know what I saw during these 7 years? I saw millions of young people who were not starting families, let alone businesses, because they couldn't pay their bills. I saw millions of young people who were buried under a mountain of debt and trapped in their parents' basements. I saw record high levels of anxiety, stress, depression, mental illness, even suicides and drug overdoses, to the point that our country's life expectancy has declined for 3 years in a row. First time in 100 years that has happened, Iowa. How many of you have seen stores close where you work and live here in the state? Raise your hand. And why are those stores closing? It's a one-word answer. Amazon, that's right.
Notice how he interacts with the audience. Not only did he give off great vibes, but he knew how to captivate them. He could definitely read the room. His humanistic message hits home with a lot of people there, especially those families. Again, his entrance. The whole thing was perfect. I barely have anything to critique. But there's more. Prior to the event, we had Yangapalooza. Not only did River Chromo from Reezer perform there, but Yang's wife, Evelyn Yang, has finally made her debut onto the campaign trail.
Let's give a warm Yang welcome to my wife, Evelyn Yang! They call it a better half for a reason.
There was so much hype in the Yang gang for her arrival, but I can see why. When it comes to Yang's humanistic policies and message, Evelyn definitely has the influence. You can hear the passion and conviction in their voices whenever they discuss the struggles of special needs children and even adults. Plus the heavy stigmas they bear that unfortunately still remain in our society. For them to not just openly talk about these issues, but to actually champion solutions and or policies that can actually assist individuals on the autistic spectrum and with mental illnesses is unprecedented. No other candidate has done that, not even Bernie. But while we're on the subject, Yang has also made an appearance at another Iowa event that discussed the everyday challenges of people with disabilities, the poor regulations and mistreatments, and the sort of solutions that could possibly better their lives.
But we know the inequities are staggering around the country, and many of these communities, if you put it on them, then they feel like they have to rob Peter to pay Paul. You know what I mean? They're like, okay, you want me to fund the special education programs in K through 12. You know what that means? I'm gonna have to cut back on this. I'm gonna have to cut back on that. And to me, these are not choices we should be putting in the community's hands. This is a federal responsibility, and we can, again, easily afford it as the wealthiest and most advanced economy in the history of the world. So instead of putting communities in these impossible positions, we should be funding these instead of 40%, we should be funding them 100% and not even leave the communities in a position where they have to make these choices. And I want to say the only barrier between us funding these things 100% is really just will. The biggest lie in American life today is that we do not have the money. There are a bunch of big lies in America today, but probably the biggest lie is we don't have the money. You all remember voting for the $4 trillion bailout of Wall Street during the financial crisis? None of us voted for that. And do you remember anyone saying, where are we going to get the money to bail out Wall Street? I don't remember that either. You know, and so when it's time to fund the education of our children, people are like, we don't have the money. It is total nonsense. We need to call it nonsense, and we need to do much, much better.
Yang's absolutely right. The assertion that we don't have the money is the biggest lie. It's amazing that the constant questions of how you're going to pay for it was never brought up when we bailed out the banks, or when we were funneling millions and nearly billions of dollars to the military and in places like Israel and Saudi Arabia. Also, let me give a quick shout out to Mr. Pelayo, who commented with a good line I think Yang should have in his pocket is, you know, it's funny how money only becomes a problem when it involves helping our own people. Oh, I couldn't agree more. That's damn true. I mean, we have plenty of funds when it's convenient. But all of a sudden we're broke the moment we're asked to solve our problems on the ground. It's no different than the argument I made in concern of helping others. It's easy for this society to destroy or worsen a person's life, but for some reason, being a good person and doing the right thing is egregious and taxing. We'll procrastinate on a life, but then turn around and talk about awareness. The only time we're ever caring is when we want some sort of profit. It's conditional and superficial. I find it very disturbing that something so practical is so difficult for us, but other coaches can do it so effortlessly. They get with the program while we're falling incredibly behind. But I digress. Furthermore, Yang even made his presence known at the NAACP event that was also held in Iowa. Here's a little clip of it. Come check it out.
When I say to people of color in this country, I say, I had words working against me, but black people in the United States have numbers working against you. And numbers are much more cruel and harsh and unyielding than any words. Now, the challenges ahead, and I love this opportunity to talk about economic freedom because to me it is so fundamental. And according to the best studies, African American median net worth will go to 0 in 2053. Now, how is that possible? How is it possible that the projections say that African American median net worth will go to zero in 2053? It's because we know that we are getting rid of the most common jobs in our country today. Retail, call centers, truck driving, manufacturing. These jobs are disappearing. It's going to be particularly disastrous for communities of color. This is what I think of as an economic natural disaster. And who suffers most in a natural disaster? We know. It's people of color with lower levels of economic resources, access to capital, and access to path forward. So we need to create a new way forward for all Americans, and this is not something that's original. The proposal I'm championing, $1,000 a month for every American, was championed by Martin Luther King in 1967 in his book, Chaos or Community. And it is what he was fighting for the day he was assassinated in 1968. And to me, it's problematic that we celebrate Dr. King's birthday every year without celebrating the truth of his message. That if we are going to address the economic imbalances in this country, we need to set a new foundation. We need to have a guaranteed minimum income for every American. And though it is decades overdue, it is not too late to make this happen in 2020.
Once again, Yang knocked it out of the ballpark. I mean, his message resonates with people from all walks of life. Like he said, he is not a politician. He's a problem solver. He just wants everyone to be able to live the same American dream he and his father had. We shouldn't have to feel bounded where we are and make tons of sacrifices in order to survive. We should have flexibility in our lives. It's extremely hard to prosper in our current society, especially if you don't fit their standards. Now, before I close out this video, I wanted to give my take on the Medicare for All issue. First off, it's pretty ignorant to automatically accuse Yang of not being for Medicare for All because he wants to keep private insurance companies. If you listen to what he said in his first TV ad, he clearly states we need to move towards a Medicare for All system, which depicts his progressive approach on the issue. I mean, he doesn't really want to keep private insurance companies. He wants to gradually eliminate them by giving other people the option to opt into a Medicare for All program or stick with private insurance, stick with their private insurance, or just stick with their private insurance, because there are still a lot of Americans who do have private insurers, and if you just simply eliminate them, it's not going to work out Yang's May with the wealth tax and the $15 minimum wage. It sounds good on paper, but if the data says it's too risky and can do more harm than good, then we gotta be more realistic. Not to say they should be taken off the table, but we gotta find the most logical approach that can bypass the corruptive systems we have in place today. Take the game Jenga, for instance. In the game, you have to gradually take out these blocks from the middle of what you build from these blocks and stack them on top of one another. But if you're too quick about it, the whole thing topples over. You gotta start from scratch, back to square one. It's the same scenario with something like Medicare for All. If we aren't careful, it can end up being another form of the Affordable Care Act, which Obama implemented, but there will be all these unnecessary modifications made by Congress, and it can have a negative impact on people's health care as well as their taxes. If we're going to do this right, we gotta make America think harder. If you rush these sorts of things, you're bound to mess up. You just are. Yes, Bernie's Medicare for All isn't the only version available, and it can be critiqued. Sorry, Bernie bros. That being said, what we need to do is work together to solve these problems. One person cannot tackle these issues alone. It's a team effort. No progress will be made if we keep throwing jabs and cheap shots at each other. But that's it for today's video. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more content. Tune in next time to see what other topics, trending or otherwise, that I'll cover right here on Izzyland.
I am with you tonight because you must be that wave. I am not running for president because I fantasized about being president. I am running for president because, like so many of you in this room, I'm a parent and I'm a patriot. I have seen the future that lies ahead for our children, and it is not something I am willing to accept. Here in Iowa, you actually know what the future holds. If you look up, you saw it happen to your farms and then your factories. Now it's on your main streets. Soon it will hit your highways. It is up to you and you alone to turn the tide. You must be the wave that helps us rewrite the rules of the 21st century economy to work for us, to work for you, the people of this country. You must be the wave that helps give the entire nation a new way forward and gives me and millions of parents around the country the ability to look our children in the eyes and say, with truth in our hearts, your country loves you, your country values you, and you are going to be all right.